I met Chloe during my third year at community college, back when my hands were always rough from hauling lumber, and my back ached from working part-time at the yard just to afford my classes. I was studying construction management. Nothing glamorous, just a practical trade I knew would pay off. Chloe, though, she was the opposite of everything I knew. Beautiful, confident, with this sharp intelligence that made you want to lean in and listen even if you didn't agree. She was in her senior year at the state university, double majoring in women's studies and business. The kind of girl who turned heads and knew it. The kind of woman who used the word patriarchy before coffee and called out internalized misogyny like it was seasoning in every conversation. Before we get into the sweet part, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you're watching us for the first time, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification so you never miss any new story. We crossed paths when I was delivering some supplies to the student center they were renovating. She was sitting on a bench, flipping through a stack of readings, and I must have looked like a sweaty mess with dust on my boots and a clipboard in hand. But she looked up, gave me this half smile, and made some clever remark about men in hard hats being the only useful part of campus infrastructure. It was snarky, but playful, and somehow that led to coffee. Our first official date was at this tiny Italian place I knew. Nothing fancy, red checkered tablecloths, garlic knots that would clog your arteries but make you die happy, she called, it quaint in a tone that wasn't entirely complimentary. Then spent the evening talking about rooftop cocktail events downtown where real networking happened. I remember smiling through it, thinking she was ambitious, driven, not like the girls from my neighborhood. She laughed at my jokes, reached out and touched my forearm when I said something dumb, and when she talked, her eyes locked onto mine, like I mattered. I walked out of there wondering how the hell someone like her had given someone like me the time of day. We dated for 2 years before we got married. During that time, I supported her goals with everything I had. I picked up overtime to help her pay for grad school applications. I watched her rehearse interview answers, helped tweak her resume, even offered to connect her with project managers I knew in the industry, though she always waved that off. Construction isn't corporate, she said once, almost like it was beneath her still. I loved how she lit up when she talked about breaking barriers and smashing glass ceilings. She told me she wanted to be a CEO someday, or at least own her own firm. I believed her. Hell, I wanted it for her. There was pride in knowing the woman I loved wanted more than comfort. She wanted power. We got married when we were both 25. The ceremony was tasteful but expensive, courtesy of her parents, who had money and weren't shy about reminding me that I didn't. I didn't care. I loved her. I figured that once she was out of school, we'd be a team. Me on the construction sites, her in the boardroom, both of us building something real. But that version of Chloe, the ambitious, hardworking, visionary woman I married, she started fading the moment we said I do. Her first job was as an office manager at a small marketing firm. It didn't last. 3 months in, she quit. Told me her boss was sexist because he asked her to order coffee for a client meeting. I didn't get a degree to be someone's assistant, she said, throwing her resignation letter on the kitchen counter like it was a badge of honor. I told her I understood, tried to be supportive, but inside I felt this strange twist in my gut, like something wasn't adding up. After that, she jumped from one part-time job to another. Receptionist, junior admin, social media coordinator for a wellness startup that paid in exposure and essential oils. Each time she quit, it was the same excuse. They didn't respect my potential, or it was a toxic work environment. Meanwhile, I was grinding. Moved from basic labor to crew lead, then to assistant project manager. I was managing deadlines, budgets, and people while she took time to realign her purpose. The problem wasn't that she was unemployed. The problem was that she started treating me like the employee, like her personal bank account, chauffeur, therapist, and handyman all rolled into one. When we bought our first house, I bought it. Technically, with my savings and a loan co-signed by my parents, Chloe saw it as her blank canvas. Not in a creative way, more like a personal wish list of luxury renovations. She wanted to gut the kitchen, tear out the floors, install a soaking tub, and repaint every surface to reflect her vision. I wasn't against fixing the place up. We were building a life together, after all. But when I suggested we do some of the work ourselves to save money, she laughed. We need professionals, she said. And besides, I don't do manual labor. The irony of her saying that to someone who worked in construction didn't even register for her at first. I thought this was just a phase. Maybe she was still finding her footing. Maybe the job market really was as bad as she said. But the longer we were married, the clearer it became. Chloe's version of feminism wasn't about equality. It was about convenience. She had no problem preaching about women's rights, about breaking free from outdated gender roles, but she had zero issue living like a pampered housewife while I worked 12-hour days. She'd sit in yoga pants, drinking oat milk lattes, scrolling through TikToks about soft life culture and the evils of capitalism. Right before she ordered another $300 wellness kit from Goop on my credit card. And when I came home, tired, sweaty, and covered in drywall dust, the house would be a mess. Dishes in the sink, trash overflowing. Takeout containers on the counter. No dinner? No hey babe, how was your day? Just her on the couch watching Real Housewives like it was a full-time job. I'd ask if we could eat together and she'd say, "Oh, I already ate, but I ordered something for you. It'll be here in 30. Then she'd send me a Venmo request. I wish I was kidding. She literally charged me for my half of the DoorDash order she placed with my money in the house. I paid for and still I held on. Still, I told myself this was temporary. Maybe she'd find herself again. Maybe the ambitious woman I fell in love with was still in there somewhere, buried under all the quotes about female empowerment and luxury skincare. But there were cracks, intimacy, down to once a month, and even then it felt transactional. Acts of affection were almost always followed by a conversation about some new item she needed, a dress for a friend's wedding, a course on becoming a digital creator, a getaway to reset her mental space. She talked a lot about emotional labor and self-care, but never once asked how I was holding up. At one point, I mentioned how exhausted I felt, and she responded with, "Maybe you need to learn better boundaries. Just because you're good at physical labor doesn't mean you have to kill yourself over it." And that was the thing. Chloe was always talking about boundaries, respect, empowerment, equality. But when it came down to it, she didn't practice any of it. She just expected to be taken care of, expected to be admired, expected to be supported emotionally, financially, physically, without giving any of that back. Her feminism wasn't about sharing the load. It was about avoiding it entirely, as long as she could hide behind the right buzzwords. By our 5th year of marriage, I was running million-dollar projects, managing construction crews across multiple sites, and bringing in a 6-figure salary. And yet, I felt like a damn ATM with a pulse. Chloe, the woman who once swore she'd conquer the world, was now more concerned with curated Instagram photos and keeping up with influencers than contributing to our marriage in any meaningful way. It wasn't just disappointing, it was humiliating. I'd built a life from scratch. She was busy perfecting a narrative. A narrative where she was the modern, empowered woman, and I was the oppressive husband expecting her to play maid. A narrative so convenient she actually started to believe it herself. But beneath the hashtags and carefully filtered selfies, reality was creeping in. And sooner or later, she'd realize that I wasn't going to carry this fantasy forever. She just didn't know it yet. The day everything cracked wasn't even supposed to be a big deal. It was just a Friday in July, hot and sticky, the kind of day where the sweat clings to your back and tempers run short on job sites. But for me, that Friday marked something bigger, a moment I'd spent years working toward. I'd closed a deal on a huge mixed-use development downtown, a project that had been a logistical nightmare, permits delayed, labor shortages, materials going up in price every month, but I pulled it off. Came in under budget, ahead of schedule. My boss pulled me aside, clapped me on the back, and told me I was being considered for senior project manager. The title came with a healthy raise and a 5-figure bonus for a kid who started out shoveling gravel and hauling lumber. It felt like reaching the summit of a damn mountain. I should have been elated. And for a moment I was on the way home. I stopped by a little bakery and picked up a chocolate mousse cake, Chloe's favorite. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd celebrate like a couple again. Maybe we'd reconnect. I was naive, still clinging to some thread of hope that she could see what I was trying to build for us. I got home around 6:30 p.m., early for me. Walked through the door smiling like an idiot and called out, "Babe, I'm home. Got some amazing news." Chloe didn't look up from her phone. She was sprawled out on the leather couch, legs tucked under her, scrolling. "There's no food," she said flatly. "Didn't know you were coming home this early." I held up the dessert. "Thought we could celebrate?" The downtown project came in under budget. Boss says I'm in line for senior PM. Big promotion. Big bonus, she blinked, finally lowering her phone. "Oh, that's nice. What does that mean exactly?" Not a smile, not a hug, not even a high five, just calculation. I watched her mentally crunch the numbers of my potential raise. Like a spreadsheet was scrolling through her eyes. Then came the real kicker. "That's perfect timing," she said. "There's this feminist podcast panel in Chicago this weekend. All the big names will be there. It's $500 for tickets. Plus, we'd need a hotel and flights. But with your bonus coming," I couldn't even respond right away. I'd just poured my soul into a months-long project and her first thought was a weekend getaway for her. Not a shared trip. Not a celebratory dinner. Just another way to spend money. I shook my head. This weekend, I was hoping we could go to Giovanni's. That was our first date spot. Celebrate. Just us. She wrinkled her nose like I'd suggested we eat gas station hot dogs. Giovanni's. That place is so basic. Besides, this panel is important for networking. They're talking about the modern female experience in corporate America. I don't know what snapped in me right then. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the months, years of carrying the weight of our lives on my back while she floated above it all, untethered. I just said it. What would you know about corporate America? You haven't held a job longer than 3 months in years? Her head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing. Excuse me? That's incredibly insensitive. You know how toxic workplaces are for women? The microaggressions alone. I cut her off. We need to talk about this. About everything. I gestured around the living room, the cluttered coffee table, the shopping bags, the DoorDash wrappers. This isn't working. She rolled her eyes like I was a child whining about bedtime. What now? I'm trying to relax. I feel like I'm doing this alone, I said, and my voice cracked just enough to surprise even me. I work all day, every day. So you can sit in this house that I pay for, wear clothes I bought, eat food I provide, and all I get is a Venmo request for takeout and an eye roll when I ask for support. She stood up slowly, wrapping her silk robe tighter around her waist. Her face flushed and furious. Was the face of someone used to winning arguments before they started? Are you seriously dragging out this patriarchal housewife garbage? Right now? I didn't marry you to become your maid or your cook. This isn't about gender roles, Chloe. It's about effort. I'm killing myself to give us a good life. You're contributing nothing. Not emotionally, not financially, not even in the damn kitchen. Her jaw clenched. I manage our social life. I keep us connected. I do emotional labor. That's just as valuable, emotional labor? I laughed, not kindly. Chloe, I come home and cook for myself, clean up after you, manage all the bills. Remember your mother's birthday and try to keep us afloat while you tweet about soft life. Values? You think you're doing the emotional labor? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Then came the final blow. You're just threatened by a strong woman who knows her worth. I looked at her, really looked at her. The expensive robe, the fresh manicure, the phone she hadn't put down in hours. No, I said. I'm tired of being used. She stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the picture frames. I sat on the couch, the mousse cake sweating. On the coffee table beside me, untouched. That night, I slept on the couch. She didn't speak to me once the next day. By Saturday afternoon, she was back to her usual routine, out with her friends brunching, shopping, flashing her ring and pretending her marriage was one of mutual love and luxury. Except I knew now, it WASN's single quotes T. On Sunday morning. I opened our banking app. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe just to get a handle on how bad it really was. It was worse than I imagined. We had less than $5,000 in savings, our credit card debt. Over $30,000. I hadn't even known about 2 of the cards, store cards she'd opened in my name. One of them, from Nordstrom, was maxed out at $7,500. She'd been making minimum payments from our joint checking account. On average, she was spending close to $6,000 a month on online shopping, food delivery, spas, and random wellness services. Meanwhile, I hadn't bought a new pair of boots in over a year. That fishing trip with my dad I kept putting off, because money's tight. That was my money being burned on eyelash extensions and crystals that night. While Chloe was soaking in a rose petal bath using bombs I bought her for Christmas, I sat down with my laptop and made changes. First, I moved most of our joint savings into an account in my name only. I left enough to cover the mortgage and utilities for the next month, nothing more. Then, I canceled all but one of her credit cards. On the one I left active, I set a weekly limit, $200. I activated purchase alerts for any transaction over $50. Lastly, I checked our phone bill and saw a number she'd been texting at all hours, often past midnight. I didn't recognize it. I didn't ask about it. I didn't need to. The writing was already on the wall. When she got out of the bath and checked her phone, I was still on the couch. I didn't even look up when I heard the gasp. She came into the room with nothing but her towel and a face full of rage. What the hell did you do? My cards aren't working. Everything's declined. I finally looked at her. I adjusted. You're spending to match your contribution. You can't do that, she screeched. That's financial abuse. Explain that to a judge, I said. Explain how your husband paying every bill while you live like royalty is abusive. Go ahead. Let me know how that plays out. She stormed off again, this time not slamming the door. For the first time in months, I felt something other than exhaustion. I felt free. For the next few weeks, the air in our house was thick with tension. Chloe was trying to play it cool, pretending nothing had changed, but the cracks in her facade were starting to show. Her once daily shopping deliveries disappeared. The house was suddenly cleaner, magically so. She started waking up before noon and even asked if I wanted coffee one morning, not because she suddenly cared, but because the money train had slowed down, and she was scrambling to find the emergency exit. I played along. I let her pretend that everything was fine, that the budget cuts were just a temporary hiccup. I even acted like I hadn't noticed the late-night texting had stopped, or, more accurately, gone silent. She was hiding something. I knew it, but I wanted her to think I'd let my guard down because I had a plan. I didn't tell her I'd been quietly speaking with a divorce attorney. I didn't mention I'd started separating our assets legally and gathering every receipt, every bank statement, and every message from the last 2 years. I didn't bring up the camera I had installed in the home office. Subtle, tucked into the bookshelf, angled perfectly toward my desk, where Chloe now suddenly liked to work. Work, in her case, meant Zoom calls with friends, or what she called brand building sessions, where she brainstormed content for a non-existent influencer career. Her latest scheme, a podcast about feminist homemaking, a contradiction she proudly claimed was revolutionary. She even recorded a trailer. I listened to it late one night. It was 45 minutes of vague empowerment quotes stolen from Pinterest, sprinkled with thinly veiled jabs about men who expected women to build empires but couldn't boil pasta without complaining. It was laughable and it was sad. But mostly it was a sign that Chloe still didn't get it. One Friday night, I came home later than usual. I'd stayed out grabbing drinks with a coworker. My first night out in over 6 months. Chloe was on the couch, phone in hand, eyes glued to TikTok. She barely looked up when I walked in. "You said you'd be home by 8?" she muttered. I shrugged, dropping my keys on the table. Changed my mind. I needed a break. "You could have told me," she said, tone sharp. "You don't tell me when you order $1,000 skincare kits," I replied, heading to the kitchen. I figured we were past that whole checking in phase. She didn't respond. The next morning, I was up early. Saturday meant I could finally work on the side renovation project I'd taken on for a friend. It wasn't about money. I just liked doing something with my hands again, away from paperwork and budgets. As I packed my tool bag, I noticed Chloe's laptop was left open on the desk. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but something about the way she'd shut down the moment I got home last night, it didn't sit right. I glanced at the screen. There it was, an open tab labeled Chicago Weekend Itinerary Girls Trip. Except, it wasn't a girls' trip. The text messages were still up to him. "Can't wait to see you again. You booked the room, right, Chloe? Of course. Same hotel. Don't worry, he's working all weekend. He never asks questions. Him, damn, he still has no idea. Chloe, please. He's too busy playing the hardworking husband. Men like him never see it coming." My stomach turned. This wasn't new. This wasn't spur of the moment. This was a full-blown affair, with hotel bookings, secret messages, and God knows what else. I stared at the screen for a long time, not out of shock, but because something inside me went completely still. No anger, no heartbreak, just stillness. Like everything I'd suspected was finally confirmed, and it meant one thing. It was time to end this. That afternoon, I called my attorney and moved our timeline up. We filed the initial paperwork that Monday morning, quietly, strategically. By the time Chloe realized what was happening, everything was already in motion, but I didn't stop there. You see, the house we lived in, it was bought under my name alone. I'd paid every cent of the mortgage, every renovation bill, every utility. My lawyer helped me draft a formal eviction notice, not out of spite, but out of principle. If she wanted a soft life, she could go find it elsewhere. I served the papers 2 days later. She was sitting at the dining table, sipping her green smoothie, scrolling through a spreadsheet labeled brand sponsor targets. I dropped the envelope in front of her like a hammer. "What's this?" she asked, brows furrowing. "Read it." She flipped it open, her eyes scanning faster and faster. "You're divorcing me?" Her voice cracked like she couldn't believe it. "I am. You can't be serious." I sat down across from her, calm as a surgeon. "I supported you. I carried you. I covered for you. And while I did all that, you lied to me. You cheated on me. You spent everything we had building your image while destroying our reality." She stood up, nearly knocking her drink over. "This is emotional abuse. You're gaslighting me." "No," I said, my voice level. "I'm setting boundaries. The ones you said were so important." "But I don't have anywhere to go," she stammered. "You have plenty of friends, sponsors, wellness retreats. Maybe call your boyfriend. I'm sure he can help." Her mouth fell open. "You went through my messages." I shrugged. "You left them open. But if it makes you feel better, I've got screenshots. Just in case things get messy. She stared at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her, because she didn't. She was so used to manipulating, so used to playing the victim behind empowerment quotes and filtered selfies, that she never imagined someone could see through the performance. You don't mean this, she whispered. I stood up. You're right. I don't mean it. I've already done it. And with that, I left the house. When I returned later that night, Chloe was gone. She'd packed a few bags and left behind a note, something half apology, half guilt trip, sprinkled with hashtags and buzzwords about healing and empowerment. I didn't read the whole thing, I just tossed it in the trash. The house was quiet now, peaceful. I cleaned the kitchen, made myself dinner, and sat down with a cold beer. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe. No more pretending, no more performing, just me, my work, and a second chance at a life where love wasn't a transaction. She thought she had me fooled, but the truth is, I let her play her game. I just built the exit first. After Chloe left, things got eerily quiet, but not in a bad way. The air in the house was lighter, like the tension had finally lifted. I hadn't realized how much energy I spent walking on eggshells until I didn't have to anymore. The silence wasn't lonely, it was peaceful. I could hear myself think again. I could sleep through the night without wondering which version of her I'd wake up to. Still, I knew it wasn't over. Not really. Chloe was never the kind of person to fade quietly into the background. She thrived on attention, and now that the marriage she'd used as her platform was collapsing, she was bound to pivot. And right on cue, she did. 2 weeks after the divorce filing, I stumbled across her newest post while scrolling Instagram out of boredom. It was a slow-motion montage of Chloe standing barefoot on a beach, wind whipping her hair, arms spread wide like some bohemian messiah. Text overlay and pastel cursive read, "Sometimes you have to break to blossom." She had tagged a new account, Chloe and Hained. I clicked it. The page was filled with curated chaos. Emotional quotes, behind-the-scenes crying selfies, and sponsored posts for everything from kombucha to self-love retreats. She'd rebranded herself overnight as a divorce recovery coach, claiming to help other women escape emotionally unavailable men and reclaim their power. She was using me as content. Each caption had little jabs, clever enough to avoid legal issues but obvious to anyone who knew us. He wanted a maid, not a partner. Toxic masculinity disguised as hard work. He bought things. I offered vibes. Only one of us had real value. I should have been furious, but I wasn't, because while Chloe was busy building her empire of pretend empowerment, I was watching it fall apart behind the scenes. You see? The day after she moved out, I called my financial advisor and started damage control. We went line by line through every account. I froze any joint assets. I disputed fraudulent credit card charges, ones made in my name but clearly not authorized. And most importantly, I tracked every dollar that had quietly leaked from our accounts into her lifestyle. Vacations, spa treatments, business expenses. It added up to a number that made even my lawyer blink. "Do you want to go after it?" he asked. I thought about it. Suing Chloe for the money she burned through would be fair, but not worth it. She didn't have any assets. Her podcast hadn't even launched, and her followers were mostly pity likes from friends. Legally, she'd lose, but financially, there was nothing to gain. No, I told him. Let her think she got away with something. The real loss is coming. And it did. By the end of the month, Chloe's online presence began to buckle under its own weight. She tried launching a webinar, How to Monetize Your Divorce Story, but only 3 people registered. She posted a teary-eyed TikTok about being targeted by trolls, which was just backlash from women who realized she had no qualifications. Screenshots of her texts with the guy she was cheating with leaked anonymously in the comments. Apparently, he wasn't interested in a real relationship. Once the free hotel trips stopped, so did he. Her followers dropped. The sponsorships dried up, and suddenly, the glow-up wasn't glowing anymore. A mutual friend, Jasmine, reached out one evening. "You won't believe this," she said. "Chloe's crashing at her cousin's place. Word is, she tried to move into an apartment downtown, but they denied her application because of her credit score." I smirked. Must have been all that emotional labor. Jasmine snorted. She said she's a victim of financial abuse. Of course she did. But as satisfying as it was to watch her carefully constructed brand fall apart, I didn't waste too much time celebrating. I had my own life to rebuild. Without her shadow looming over every decision, I started reconnecting with people I'd drifted from during the marriage. Friends, family, even old coworkers who used to invite me out for game nights I never had the energy to attend. I started cooking again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I fixed up the garage, finally converted it into a mini workshop, and spent weekends making things with my hands instead of just signing off on blueprints. And then something unexpected happened. I met someone. Her name was Erin. We met through a renovation project I took on for a local nonprofit that helped veterans and low-income families get their homes up to code. She was part of the organizing team, sharp, practical, and unflinchingly honest. Where Chloe was all surface, Erin was substance. She didn't talk about empowerment. She lived it. She ran logistics, coordinated volunteers, and wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. I liked that one day. After wrapping up work on a home for a single mother with 3 kids, she handed me a bottle of water and asked, "You always this quiet?" I shrugged. "Guess I'm still figuring out how to talk like a normal person again." She smiled. "Well, you swing a mean hammer. That's a start." It wasn't a grand romance. It didn't need to be. It was easy, real, and grounded in mutual respect, something I hadn't experienced in years. We started seeing each other slowly, casually, no pressure. She never asked for anything but time and honesty, and in return, she offered the same. Meanwhile, Chloe's desperation began to bubble up in public view. She posted a YouTube video titled, "My Truth: How I Survived Narcissistic Abuse." The comments were mostly bots, and people asking if she was okay. She'd taken on the role of victim with the same enthusiasm she once reserved for being a lifestyle icon. But now, there was no audience left to clap for her. Then came the final attempt. She showed up at my house. It was a Saturday morning. I was cleaning out the garage when I saw her car pull into the driveway. She stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses and a hoodie like a paparazzi target. She looked tired, pale, smaller. "Somehow, I just need a minute," she said, standing a few feet away. I nodded and wiped my hands on a rag. "You've got to." She hesitated, then blurted, "I made a mistake." I didn't respond. "I thought I needed freedom," she continued, "but I was just running from responsibility. I didn't appreciate what we had." Still, I stayed quiet. Finally, she stepped closer. "Can we talk?" "No," I said. Her eyes welled up. "Please. I don't have anyone else to turn to." I looked at her. Really looked, and all I saw was the ghost of the woman I used to love. A person who burned bridges thinking they'd never collapse. "I'm not your safety net," I said quietly. "You wanted independence. This is it." She turned away, back toward her car. For once, she didn't argue. I watched her drive off without a word. Later that night, Erin and I sat on the porch, sipping coffee. I told her what happened. She didn't ask for details. She just nodded and said, "Sounds like closure." Maybe it was. Or maybe it was just life finally balancing itself out. Either way, I didn't need Chloe's apology because the best revenge was never watching her fall. It was watching myself rise, and this time on my own terms. Before we get into the sweet part, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you're watching us for the first time, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss any new story.